Everybody, Mark with North Star Aero here. Today I want to talk about something that's near and dear to the hearts of Cirrus pilots, and that's our cap system. So you can see right here, caps handle. What I always do is always place the cover back on the back points. That way, if I do need to access the handle quickly at any point, it's right there and really easy to get to, quick to get to. So some things we have to think about with the cap system. Most aircraft don't have that. So as Cirrus pilots, we do have a little bit different mentality that we have to adopt when it comes to having a parachute, having an airframe parachute. So some things we have to think about are, when are we going to do it? Why are we going to do it? If I'm over an airport, why am I going to do that instead of actually land on an airport, land on a field, land on a highway? What reasons am I going to pull it? Lost control of the airplane midair, bird strikes, loss of engine fire. So there's lots of things to think about when you're thinking about the cap system. So, so just starting from the beginning, I guess, when we can look at when we're going to use it. So this is obviously a personal choice, but I'm going to tell you, I've got 3,000 hours in this airplane as of March 2013. So with me utilizing this airplane and utilizing the CAPS airframe parachute system, I'm about as comfortable in a Cirrus as a person could be, I think. I've got lots of time in it. I've flown it, landed a Cirrus in 49 states now. I've flown in 8 different countries in a Cirrus. I've been in the highest airport in North America. I've been in the lowest airport in North America. I've been all over in this airplane. I've had all kinds of issues in it. I'm a fairly experienced pilot, and I've been flying for 13 years. And when it comes down to what am I going to do, when people ask me, okay, Mark, what are you going to do? You're a platinum C-SIP, you've done all this stuff, you have all this time in the airplane. What are you going to do when you lose an engine? And what I tell them is exactly in my mind what I plan to do. And there's not really a lot of debate in my mind of what's going to happen. I'm going to pull the parachute. And they say, well, so then the scenarios come. So, well, what if you're over a highway? And I say, well, that sounds fantastic, except for the fact there could be power lines over the highway. I have to figure out whether I can land with traffic or against traffic. Do I have room? If I'm landing with traffic, can I work myself into traffic? Can I clear that overpass or go underneath that overpass? But the biggest thing that concerns me when I'm thinking about landing on a road, and I think we have a personal obligation as Cirrus pilots, do I really want to endanger everybody else's life on that road? Because I can't come to terms with it myself, whether it be a pride thing, whatever it might be, of actually pulling the parachute and letting the technology take care of the situation, instead of me putting everybody else's life in that road in danger if I make a mistake. Even if I do everything right, I can still get people hurt on the ground. And I think that is one obligation, something we have to, kind of add into the mix as Cirrus pilots. Take that into account. Put that in your thought process. There's a family in that minivan down there on that road that you're trying to land on. Is it worth risking their lives when the parachute works every time? When the parachute has been pulled within specs, it's worked every time. There have been a few parachute pulls where the parachute hasn't worked. One of them was, I believe it was about 270 knots. A gentleman iced up out west, and unfortunately the parachute wasn't able to slow him down. It detached from the airplane. But there's been parachute pulls at very, very low altitudes. I know somebody personally that pulled at 400 feet and walked away. And there have been parachute pulls inverted. There have been parachute pulls, I believe the fastest pull was 196. And as of March of 2013, I think we have about 6 pulls over the 133 specified number. So the parachute works in a wide range of scenarios as far as airspeed, attitude. So that really takes the landing on a road thing, unless it's a very special circumstance, it really takes it kind of out of, off the table for me. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to put my life in danger and somebody else's life in danger when I have such a fantastic system on board. So let's go to the next one. I'm over an airport. So they say, okay, Mark, you're at 8,000 feet over an airport. What are you going to do? So, the way I look at it, it kind of depends. Am I at 8,000 feet over, let's say at my home airport, or let's say a 4,000 foot airport. Okay. So I'm directly over a field 8,000 feet at 4,000 foot runway. That sounds fantastic. 4,000 feet, that's plenty to land on under normal circumstances, right? So now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to descend from 8,000 feet as I'm circling, as, there's oil going on the windscreen or whatever the case might be. I'm dealing with all those situations. I'm dealing with passengers, all this stuff, and I have one opportunity to make a perfect setup, a perfect pattern, and a perfect landing. I have one chance. If I do it perfect 9 out of 10 times, that means one time, 10% of the time, in that case, everybody on board doesn't make it, including myself. So let's see, the CAPS works every time, and that works 90% of the time if I do really well. So, if you're a gambler, play the odds. It only makes sense. The parachute works. So, if I'm over Greensboro at 10,000 feet, okay, 10,000 foot runway, taxiway is right beside it, I may take into consideration that runway. I have lots of runway. It's not very critical if I set up correctly. I have air traffic control to take care of the situation for me. So there's a lot of things going on. Now that comes back around, now is that day or night? Now if I'm over Greensboro at 10,000 feet, they have a 10,000 foot runway, and it's nighttime, I'm pulling the parachute. And they say, why is that? At night, it is so hard to tell depth. It is so hard to tell distance. There's just too many things at play at night for me to feel comfortable pulling or to try to land off field or on field at night. It's just not worth it. The parachute works. People have come down in trees and water, on the side of mountains. I mean, everything you can think of, and the parachute works. So even at night, it's not even a decision. I'm pulling the parachute. So just take that in mind. As you're doing these cross countries in the Cirrus or any aircraft with the airframe parachute, take that into account. Think about the situation. Think about what if. What am I going to do? The only way you can really get good at, working through that is to actually do it. You work through your scenarios. If you can get in a simulator like down at Kilo Romeo Yankee in Atlanta, they have a full motion Cirrus simulator down there. That's a fantastic way to get in there and pull the parachute. There are simulators up in Duluth, Minnesota, or a simulator up there. It's not a full motion, but it's Perspective Avionics, and you can go in and pull the parachute. There's one out in Las Vegas. There's a few, around the country, but I highly recommend you get in a simulator. If that's not an option, get in the plane with an instructor and go through these scenarios. Would you actually pull the parachute? There's been a lot of accidents where people would have survived, or it's highly likely they would have survived if they would have pulled the parachute. So start, as a Cirrus pilot, start thinking about, when am I going to pull the parachute? Under what scenarios? Hopefully all scenarios is what I would like to see. People just pulling the parachute. You lose your engine, you pull the parachute. Day or night, over runways, not over runways. For some reason something's wrong with the airplane, you pull the parachute. If you're flying with passengers, even if they're not pilots, tell them simply how to pull the parachute. If something happens to me, I want you to pull the red handle back, and I want you to pull the red handle up there. So pull the mixture back, all the way to idle, pull the red handle up there. It's as simple as that. 2 things, anybody can do it. They can save your life as well as theirs. So, it's something to think about. As you get in this airplane, you pilot the Cirrus around, or an airplane with a airframe parachute system. BRS has done a fantastic job with making just an incredible system for this aircraft. It works. It saves so many lives. I know a lot of people personally that have saved. A lot of you, if you're COPA members, Cirrus Owners of Pilots Association members, different migrations and CPP events, you've heard a lot of speakers that have had, actually pulled the parachute system, and hats off to them. I mean, they've done, they did what they needed to do to get their family safe, home safe, and they made an incredibly hard decision, but they knew it was the best decision to give us the highest probability of going home safe. And I hope it's the decision you make too. Really sit down and think about it. What are you going to do? Mentally put yourself in those situations. Run through the flows in the airplane, and when you do that, touch your hand to the handle. That makes it real for you. When you're actually running through the scenario, okay, I lost my engine, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. I'm at 2,000 feet. I don't have any other option, or I don't have an option that I like. There's a 6,000 foot runway over there. I don't feel like I'm going to make it, or I do not want to try making it. Put your hand on the handle. This takes 40 pounds of pressure to activate it. By touching it, don't be afraid of the handle. Put your hand on it, and build that muscle memory of where that handle is. Kind of get over that that fear of touching the handle, put that in your mind. What are you going to do? I'm going to go to the handle. If I have a problem, I lose my engine, that is my best out. A lot of us that are flying this airplane, I flew 650 hours last year in Cirrus. The average owner flies 100 to 130 hours a year, with many flying well under 100 hours. Flying 50 or 60 hours a year, I mean, to be honest, a 50 or 60 hour pilot, you do a trip a month basically, a long trip to the beach or something a month. The skill set is usually not high enough to even contemplate gliding to an airport. If you need to prove that to yourself, pull your engine at 5,000 feet and try to glide to a field while you have engine power. How many times do you make it? That's the best way to prove to yourself that, if you're having doubts about the parachute system, try it. Try it 10 times. How many times did you make it safely without having to add power? Just work through some of these scenarios, and I think it's going to make you not only a safer pilot, but it's going to make you a better pilot. You're always going to be thinking, contemplating these things, looking for your outs, more aware of your situation. So I'm curious to hear your comments on it and what you guys think. I'm happy to do another video more in depth, as far as usage of the parachute. But just let me know what you guys think, and kind of your thought process of what that goes with the parachute. If some of you watching have pulled the parachute, we'd love to hear your story. We can put it up on our blog, attach it to the video. That would be fantastic. But just with this technology, really think about using it. And not only think about using it, build that mental plan that you are going to. It's a pretty sensitive topic for pilots to talk about, emergency situations. But when you're out doing your BFR, doing your, IPC, what are you doing? You're working on failures. You're working on emergencies. We're always working on that worst case scenario because we want to be sharp for it. The parachute system works the same way. Don't just, oh yeah, it's up there. Really get involved in your thought process. So, all right, everybody. Hopefully this video was helpful. I'm really looking forward to hearing your comments on this one. Feel free. I'm gonna put this on Facebook and at facebook.com/NorthStarAero, and it'll also obviously be on YouTube. And we'll link it over to our blog and our website. And hopefully we can have some good comments and open up some good conversation between different owners of whether it be Cirrus or anything with the BRS on it, or parachute system. I'd love to hear your comments, things you think about, why or what your decision-making processes are for using the caps airframe parachute. All right, fly safe, guys, and look forward to seeing you in the air.